This is where Isaiah's vision of the resurrected community comes in. For this is a resurrection text. Verse 1, for soon my salvation will come and my deliverance be revealed. And this resurrected community is portrayed as God's uncomfortable gathering of foreigners, eunuchs, outcasts, and others. You see, folks, it's no coincidence that God's redeemed community in Isaiah's vision is accentuated by the inclusion of eunuchs and foreigners, specifically. You see, these two groups were known and defined, and therefore disowned and disallowed by their bodies. That is to say, within the religious imaginary of Israel, the bodies of eunuchs and foreigners bore accentuated particularity, inescapable particularity, particularity that loudly announced difference in the midst of the people of God. Through this loud particularity, God's universal redemption is announced. The particular announces the universal and not the other way around. The house of prayer for all peoples is embodied by the inclusion of eunuchs and foreigners in their particular, very particular embodiments. As the church, as God's uncomfortable gathering of foreigners, eunuchs, outcasts, and others, we are resurrected in our particularities so that we may celebrate and protect all particularity. But there is more. You see, Jesus' resurrected flesh is not just Jewish flesh, it's wounded flesh. The resurrected Christ still has his wounds. Thus, we, the church, are to see the totality of creation, now renewed by the resurrection. This totality, we are to see it through the very wounds of Jesus. Through the wounds of Christ, we are to see the mother and communities of Trayvon Martin, the mother and communities of Michael Brown, of Sandra Bland, of Eric Gardner, of Terrence Crusher, the community of Emmett Till, the community of Ada Mae Collins, the mothers and communities of all those unknown and unnamed. And we see them holding on to the promise of God in Isaiah. I will give them an everlasting name that shall never be cut off. All the particularities of embodiment are within the purview of God's grace. Each individual body in its brokenness and particularity is within the scope of divine redemption. But there is more. See, the church's task of professing the resurrection of particularity is indeed uncomfortable, scandalous, revolutionary, and will inevitably engender violence, resistance, and hate. As a result, new life in Christ may require new death, may require that we be witnesses, or the root word, that we be martyrs, that give our living and maybe our very lives in professing the blessed particularity of a resurrected creation. Now, I am not asking, to be clear, I am not asking those communities whose black bodies have been taken away by racism to offer their bodies for the rest of us. I am calling the rest of us whose bodies have gone undisturbed by the police state and by the structures of racism to offer our bodies. To offer our bodies, and to do so with the certitude and the confidence that we are clothed with power from on high. That the Spirit that was on creation, hovering over the waters, that the Spirit that spoke through Esther and Ruth, that the Spirit that speaks through the prophets, that the Spirit that descended upon Mary, that the Spirit that descended on the day of Pentecost, that the Spirit of consummation, that the power from on high This power is within us. And we can offer our bodies because they're clothed with power from on high. St. Augustine has an interesting take on the piece of broiled fish that Jesus eats on the beach. Augustine sees the grilled fish as the faith of the martyrs, which has been proven by fire. Modern exegetes may cringe at this, but I love this image. You see, Jesus, the wounded Jewish, one dead Jesus, takes the martyrs into himself. In Christ's very body is Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Sandra Bland, Eric Garner, Terrence Crutcher, Emmett Till, Addie Mae Collins, all those unknown and unnamed. To these, God promises, I will give them an everlasting name that shall never, ever be cut off. The flesh is at the heart of the world. At the heart of the world. Clothed with power from on high, we have new flesh. So,